Hi everyone, welcome to our new audiobook. We're thrilled to announce the launch of our Patreon channel. If you love our stories and want to enjoy more wonderful short stories or novels, don't hesitate to join our world of romance by clicking the link below. Now, let's start.
On the anniversary of our daughter's death, my alpha mate was with his mistress. I finally leave him. Chapter 1. On my daughter's death anniversary. I was 6 months pregnant when rogues attacked me near the pack border. The pack healer asked me to call my mate to authorize the emergency treatment. I endured the pain and sent desperate mind-link calls to Alpha Kale N, but he never responded. 10 minutes later, I lost my second pup and my wolf went silent. When I woke up in the pack's healing den, I opened my phone and saw a post on my mother-in-law's social media. The photo showed a happy family of 4. The caption read, "The Black Moon Pack is about to welcome our second little prince. I really hope that shameless she-wolf will leave my son alone." It turned out that on the day of my attack, Alpha Kale N had taken his first love to an amusement park. Their first child was the same age as my dead daughter, and Alara was pregnant again. I looked at my phone and let out a bitter laugh. Since he had already betrayed our mate bond, it was time for me to leave. After discovering Alpha Kale N's affair, I did 2 things. First, I went to the pack's healer den to take away the remains of my 6-month-old pup. Second, I drafted 2 agreements. 1 to sever our mate bond. 1 to renounce my Luna title. Finally, I called my father. "Dad, I agree to come back and inherit the Sunstone Pack. Once my transfer papers are ready, I'll return. You finally come to your senses. Alpha Kale N isn't right for you." I held back my grief and nodded. Dad, you're right." After hanging up, I looked at the box containing my pup's remains and cried silently. A moment later, I turned to leave, but then I heard a familiar name. Alpha Kale N, Alpha Kale N. It's not that I'm being too greedy. It's just that too many people were involved back then. If these people don't keep quiet, we'll be in trouble. I stopped in my tracks immediately. The person inside used to be my daughter's attending healer. For some reason, my heart turned cold. I had a feeling that what he said next would shatter everything I thought I knew. The pack healer didn't notice me. He continued talking. "If people found out that you stole the donated pure blood heart on the day of your daughter's surgery, I'm afraid Black Moon Pack's alliances would crumble, wouldn't they?" The healer's words carried a threat. Alpha Kale N on the other end of the phone was instantly furious. And after hearing those words clearly, I clutched my chest tightly. "I also know that you stole that heart to save Alara's child. I just wonder how your mate would react if she found out." In that instant, my heart felt like it was being cut by silver claws. I understood the whole truth. Alara was Alpha Kale N's first love. 7 years ago, the Black Moon Pack suffered a major territorial war and was on the verge of dissolution. When Alara learned about this, she chose to flee to safer territory without hesitation. I was the one who mated Kale N with my pack's resources and saved Black Moon. 3 years ago, Alara returned to our territory. From that moment on, Alpha Kale N became distracted during our runs together. He even missed countless full moons and pack ceremonies. I thought there were problems with pack security, but then I saw Alpha Kale N and Alara in a passionate embrace in his office. That day, after I pushed open the door, I went crazy and we had a fierce argument. In the end, all I got was Alpha Kale N's tired look. He explained that Alara had accidentally bumped into him. What I saw was just a misunderstanding. We had a cold war for a month, until my daughter was diagnosed with heart disease. Only then did Alpha Kale N and I briefly make up. That day, Alpha Kale N hugged me and our daughter, kissed my forehead, and made a gentle promise. "As long as I'm still Alpha of Black Moon Pack, I won't let my daughter die." I believed him. We quickly found a matching pure blood heart donor for our daughter. I thought everything was back on track, until my daughter's surgery failed. To help me get over the grief quickly, Alpha Kale N got me pregnant with our second pup. So this was the real reason behind my daughter's failed surgery. For Alara, who had abandoned him before, Alpha Kale N didn't hesitate to sacrifice my daughter. He even chose to spend my daughter's death anniversary with Alara on their illegitimate son. Thinking of my daughter's tiny body, I clutched my chest. The wounds from the rogue attack that hadn't fully healed began to ache again. Since the person Alpha Kale N loves is Alara, I will take back everything I gave him and leave his world forever. Chapter 2. When I returned home, I walked into the living room and saw Alara and my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was holding Alara's child, cooing at her grandson with loving words. Alara sat nearby, dressed in custom luxury brands, glowing with happiness. Her belly showed a slight bump, clearly a blissful pregnant she-wolf. Before I could speak, Alara noticed me. She smiled sweetly and said with hidden meaning, "Aunt Genevieve, what if Sister Serafina doesn't agree to let me move in? After all, she's your son's mate." My mother-in-law snorted with disdain. "What kind of mate is she? After all these years of being marked, she only gave me a worthless girl. If Kale-en hadn't refused, I would have kicked her out of the Black Moon Pack long ago. Not like you gave me such a precious grandson. I don't even know how to spoil him enough. I say we should just let Kale-en's ever the mate bond with that shameless she-wolf and let you be properly marked into the pack." After my mother-in-law finished speaking, Alara covered her mouth and giggled. I forced a bitter smile and walked in with no expression. I knew my mother-in-law never liked me from the start. She looked down on the Sunstone Pack as nouveau rich. Even though I brought resources when I was mocked and saved the Black Moon Pack, she still thought I was using my favor to control them. Ever since Alara returned, she couldn't wait to push Kale-en back together with her. In the past, Kale-en would always comfort me, saying he would never be with someone who had abandoned him. But years had passed, and their child was already this big. Clearly, they had gotten back together right after Alara returned. My heart ached until it went numb. I didn't even look at them as I headed upstairs. Only then did my mother-in-law notice me. Seeing that I didn't even greet them, she frowned angrily and scolded. "Serafina, you're getting ruder by the day. You don't even say hello when you see me. No wonder that worthless girl's surgery failed. It's because you don't respect your elders." I stopped in my tracks and stared at her. My child's surgery failed because she had a heartless father. Panic flashed in my mother-in-law's eyes. She didn't know if I had discovered something, so she spoke without thinking. "What does your child's death have to do with Kale-en? He and Alara's child." What are you saying?" Seeing that my mother-in-law was about to reveal everything, Kale-en finally realized something was wrong. He carefully carried a small bowl of moonlight herb soup from the kitchen. Even though his voice was urgent, he didn't spill a drop. After gently placing the soup in front of Alara, Kale-en frowned at me. "Mom was just angry. You're wrong too. How can you talk to Mom like that? Hurry up and apologize to Mom and Alara." He looked at me seriously, completely forgetting the promises he made when we were marked. He had promised he wouldn't let me suffer in a relationship with his mother, and that there would be no other she-wolves. But now it was clear that all of Kale-en's promises were lies. I looked at Kale-en coldly. "I won't apologize. You know very well that you're the ones who wronged me." With that, I headed upstairs without hesitation. Kale-en felt something strange in his heart and instinctively wanted to follow me upstairs. Suddenly, Alara cried out in pain. "Kale-en, my stomach hurts so much. I wonder if the pup was scared by Sister Serafina." Kale-en stopped immediately. He helped Alara up with concern and called a healer on his phone. Alara said with fake concern, "Brother Kale-en, you should go check on Sister Serafina first. I'm afraid she's upset." Kale-en frowned. "Don't worry about her. She's probably just throwing another tantrum. She'll be fine in a bit." Then he picked up the soup and carefully fed it to Alara. "Drink some moonlight herb soup to nourish yourself. You're pregnant now." Only then did Alara drink the soup with satisfaction. Standing at my bedroom door, I heard every word Kale-en said. Kale-en, who felt sorry for Alara's pregnancy hardships, had probably forgotten that his mate was also carrying his child. My heart turned to ash as I walked into the room and took down our marking ceremony photos. I would hand this home over to Alara, and I didn't want this alpha Kale-en anymore either. Chapter 3. The laughter and joy from downstairs continued all afternoon until evening, when Alpha Kale-en finally returned to our room. Looking at the empty room, Kale-en was clearly stunned. "Why are so many things missing?" Decluttering is the only feeling I have left of my hands," I replied flatly. It seemed he had never considered that I might leave. Kale-en quickly moved past this topic. He frowned and said, "Serafina, you are really too much just now. Mom only let Alara and them stay because she misses the pup. For the pup's sake, you shouldn't throw tantrums." I looked at Kale-en with disappointment. Even now, He was still using our dead daughter as an excuse. He didn't notice my expression and continued talking. Besides, Elara is pregnant now, and you're also expecting. Can't you be more understanding? Bitterness spread across my tongue. I bit down hard on my teeth to keep myself from questioning him. In all the time since I'd returned home, not one person had noticed that my belly had flattened. Perhaps in this pack house, no one really cared about me or the pup in my womb. I don't agree to let her move in, I roared in a low voice. Kaelin paused. Just then, Elara appeared at the doorway, with tears streaming down her face. She touched her belly and said sadly, Alpha Kaelin, since Luna Serafina is so against it, I should just move out. With that, she turned and walked away, falling hard at the end of the hallway. Kaelin was already anxious, and seeing Elara fall made him glare at me fiercely. Are you satisfied now? If anything happens to Elara's pup, I won't forgive you. His voice was full of coldness, yet his movements helping Elara were so careful and gentle. He picked up Elara and turned to leave. Kaelin, if you insist on letting her move in, I'll leave. I couldn't help but shout. Kaelin carried Elara away without looking back. Only his cold voice drifted back. You won't. Serafina, you have nowhere to go. Watching his cold retreating figure, I laughed through my tears. Kaelin was certain that I had fallen out with my father and had nowhere to go, so I could only stay with the Black Moon Pack. But he didn't know that before coming home, I had already applied for transfer papers. In 6 more days, I could leave completely. I began packing my belongings and documents. Before Kaelin returned, I finalized the agreements once more. What's that in your hand? Kaelin easily snatched the mate bond severance and Luna resignation agreements from my hands. My heart jumped, not knowing what to expect. In a hoarse voice, I said, just sign it. Kaelin paused, preparing to open the documents to look, while still trying to coax me. I know what I said earlier was a bit harsh, but I was just worried. If something happened to Elara at our pack house, your image with Mom would be even worse. Just think of it as praying for our daughter's blessing. As he spoke, he reached out to touch my belly. I stiffened and subtly avoided his hand. Kaelin frowned tightly, seeming to think I was still throwing a tantrum. Just as he was about to say something, his phone suddenly rang. He quickly answered the call. Through the gap, I saw Elara's name. Elara on the other end said something tearfully, and Kaelin's expression immediately darkened. I'll be right there. After hanging up, he turned to look at me. I won't be coming back tonight. Elara was so frightened by you just now that she's showing signs of miscarriage. He looked at me with blame and turned to leave. I grabbed his sleeve without caring about anything else. The documents aren't signed yet. Kaelin accused me. Don't you care about Elara at all? I remained silent, only urging him to sign quickly. The phone rang again. Kaelin finally signed the agreements in his urgency. He threw the documents at my face like he was venting his anger, saying angrily, Is that enough? I nodded silently, watching his departing figure. I felt that the mate bond between Kaelin and me had been completely severed. Chapter 4. That night, Kaelin didn't come home. Elara sent me countless photos and videos. She laid everything out before me, showing off Kaelin's love for her. Those anniversaries, the fireworks Kaelin set off for me. That E initial, it wasn't for Ember, but for Elara, because beneath all those fireworks were Elara's initials. Every moment he shared with me had Elara's shadow in it. In the last video, Kaelin held Elara tightly. The two of them entwined like true mates, even though I knew they had a pup together and must have crossed that line long ago. Seeing it with my own eyes still brought me to tears. The next day, I followed the original plan and put on an evening gown to attend the auction. I had just submitted my resignation, but I still had to do my job for now. Usually, Kaelin and I would enter the auction together, but now I could only wait at the entrance. The familiar license plate approached. Kaelin got out and froze for a moment when he saw me. But quickly, he pulled himself together and opened the back door. Elara appeared before me in a haute couture gown, dressed in luxury beyond compare. The Moonridge family had fallen long ago, and Elara's outfit was worth at least 10 million. Who had bought it for her was obvious. I stopped moving forward. Why did you bring Elara here? Kaelin frowned. Alara just wants to see the world. Be generous. I won't make you pay for her expenses. I forced a bitter smile. Now he and Alara were one, and I had become the outsider. Kale took Alara's hand and walked in, while Alara smiled smugly. People around us were shocked and said, I haven't heard any news about Alpha Kale getting a new mate. Is this the Luna? Then who's that one behind them? He pointed at me. Someone nearby said dismissively, that's Alpha Kale's assistant. She usually accompanies Alpha Kale to these events. But now that he has a new Luna, she probably won't be brought along anymore. I dug my nails into my palms and swallowed the bitterness. After entering, Alara naturally sat beside Kale, while I, the assistant, was arranged in the back row. I was completely dead inside and no longer cared about these things. Instead, Kale frowned and glanced at me. He reached out his hand, as if wanting to comfort me. But soon, Alara beside him said a few casual words and drew all his attention away. After the auction began, whatever Alara liked, and ever Alara liked, Kale would raise his hand to bid for her. If someone else bid against him, he would even raise the ceiling. Alara looked at Kale with a sweet smile and even offered him her lips. Kale seemed surprised by Alara's action. After being kissed, his first reaction was to look back at me. When he saw my face remained calm, Kale didn't feel relieved. Instead, the strange feeling in his heart grew stronger. He turned around and bid on several pieces he thought I would like, planning to give them to me afterward. People around were praising Alpha Kale and his mate's deep affection, even starting to flatter Alara. Those words could no longer stir my emotions. The auction ended quickly, and most people began to leave. Just as I was about to leave, Alara stood before me with the jewelry she had just won, looking smug. Alpha Kale Alpha Kale I see Serafina got nothing this time. Why don't we give her this necklace? Alara held it out to me like she was giving charity. I reflexively slapped her hand away hard. Alara screamed and then her eyes turned red. Kale frowned deeply and was about to scold me when suddenly a group of people rushed in through the entrance. They wore masks and quickly surrounded us. Chapter 5. A familiar face emerged from behind the masked man. His face still bore unhealed wounds. When he saw Alpha Kale looking over, he smiled menacingly. Alpha Kale, long time no see. When you destroyed my pack's territory back then, did you ever think this day would come? Kale face darkened. This man was Kale former enemy, a rogue alpha whose pack had been disbanded. Later, with my help, Kale naturally squeezed his territory into nothing, forcing his wolves to scatter. From his words, he had blamed all his suffering on Kale. Today wouldn't end well. Kale's pack guards firmly protected us behind them. The next second, Alara pushed me hard. I reflexively grabbed her hand. In the blink of an eye, we both tumbled out of the protective circle. The scarred rogue quickly grabbed both Alara and me tightly. He laughed wildly. Heaven is truly helping me. Alpha Kale. I heard everything clearly from behind. This woman is your mate, right? She's even carrying your pup. And this one has been your Luna for 7 years. I've heard you value her greatly. He looked at Kale with a twisted expression. Back then, I knelt and begged you not to be so ruthless. But you still took my pack's territory completely. You left me with nothing but rogue status. Now I don't want your territory. I want to break your heart. I want you to choose between these 2 women. After speaking, he burst into maniacal laughter. Alara screamed sharply, looking at Kale with pleading eyes. Kale, save me quickly. It's all Serafina's fault. She pushed me out. Kale, you must save me on the pup. Under Alara's pleading gaze, Kale closed his eyes tightly. Then he spoke. I want her. After seeing the direction Kale pointed, Alara screamed loudly. Kale, you can't do this. My eyes widened. My heart pounding. If this had happened before I discovered those truths, I might have believed Kale would save me. But after learning everything, I was already waiting to be abandoned. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat involuntarily. The scarred rogue smiled. Alpha Kale has made his decision. Right, and a straightforward wolf. I'll definitely let one go. With that, he roughly pushed Alara toward Kale. He excitedly reached out toward me, the scar on his face trembling with his smile. So this Luna is your true love. How pitiful for your mate, being abandoned by you. This time I'll be a good wolf and send your mate back. As for the Luna, I'll gladly accept her. The scarred rogue gripped my hair tightly and laughed maniacally. I was forced to lift my head, then got slapped hard across the face. A flash of guilt crossed Kalen's eyes, but his hands quickly moved to protect Elara behind him. My lips plicked from the blow. After seeing Kalen's expression, I finally understood. I forced a smile, my expression gradually becoming calm. So just now, for now and Nistao, Kalen hadn't chosen me in the moment of crisis. Instead, seeing the scarred rogue's hatred for him, he chose to make me Elara's scapegoat. I stopped looking at Kalen and silently lowered my head, seeing me lying there like a dead fish. The scarred rogue slapped my face several more times. Only after my face was red and swollen did he stop. Then he waved his hand, signaling his rogues to hold me down, his expression full of malice. Little Luna, don't blame me. Blame your alpha for being too ruthless. I won't take your life. I just want to taste his woman in front of him. With that, he violently tore open my clothes. Kalen looked pained and shouted loudly. Stop. Stop it. I can give you 100 million. A billion. The more pained Kalen looked, the more excited the scarred rogue became. My clothes had been completely torn off, my pale body exposed to everyone. I struggled desperately but could only watch as the scarred rogue approached with a lewd smile. Just as he was about to take the next step, another group of pack warriors rushed through the door and subdued all of the scarred rogue's subordinates. The scarred rogue was still unwilling to give up, but Kalen had already rushed over desperately. Trembling, overing scrub boy, he draped his suit jacket over me, then held me tightly. I'm sorry, Serafina. I'm sorry. I stared into the distance with dead eyes, wanting only to leave forever. Kalen picked me up, his face full of heartache as he prepared to take me to the pack's healing den. But Elara suddenly screamed behind us. Kalen. The next moment, Elara collapsed heavily to the ground, blood flowing beneath her. Kalen's hands instantly loosened. I fell hard to the ground, my arm twisting with a clear sound of breaking bones. Serafina, this is a matter of life and death. You can still move. I'll take Elara to the healing den first. Someone will take you back later. He didn't even have time to look at me. After picking up Elara, he hurriedly dropped that sentence and left. I clutched the suit jacket tightly around me, but could no longer feel any warmth. Chapter 6. Until midnight, I never saw the person Alpha Kalen said would come pick me up. After getting my wounds treated at a clinic, I stumbled home and scrubbed myself desperately in the bathroom. Lying in bed, my mind was filled with today's nightmare. I didn't sleep all night. Only when dawn broke did I finally gather enough strength. Today was the day I would get my transfer papers. From now on, Alpha Kalen and I would have nothing to do with each other. I took those 2 agreements, packed all my documents, and prepared to leave. Walking to the door, I ran straight into Alpha Kalen. His face was dark, and when he saw me, anger flashed in his eyes. Then, a heavy slap landed on my face. The force of Alpha Kalen's slap sent me flying. I couldn't help but cry out in pain. A flash of something complicated crossed Alpha Kalen's eyes, but then it turned back to hatred and disappointment. Serafina, it was the only feeling I had left as my Hina. Why did you get involved with those rogues? Why did you stage this attack? Do you know that Elara lost her pup? He glared at me with hatred, raising his hand again. But when he saw my pitiful state, his hands trembled as he lowered it. Serafina, what do you want me to do? It wasn't me. I couldn't help but shout. Alpha Kalen looked at me without any warmth. He closed his eyes tightly, then calmly announced his decision. During this time, I'll stay by Elara's side. I need to make up for what you did. When she's better, I'll mark her and announce to the world that she's the Luna of Black Moon Pack. But privately, you'll still be my mate. I forced a smile and lowered my eyes. Alpha Kalen, this is what you wanted, isn't it? Alpha Kalen looked at me with disappointment. You made the mistake first, and just paying for it. You've lost a pup too. Why can't you understand what Elara is going through? My heart ached, and the last bit of feeling I had for Alpha Kalen disappeared completely. Under Alpha Kalen's gaze, I nodded calmly. Alpha Kalen frowned, seeming surprised by how calm I was. But soon, his phone rang again, and he turned and left without hesitation. 10 minutes later, I received a text from Alara. Why are you so hard to kill? I did so much, but still couldn't get rid of you. If you're smart, you'll leave on your own. Alpha Kale N has always loved only me. He still doesn't know that the pup in your belly is dead too. Isn't that proof enough? She sent countless photos. In the photos, Alpha Kale N's expression was so gentle. So this was how he looked when he truly loved someone. I calmly blocked Alara. After completing all the procedures, there was no trace of me left at Black Moon Pack. I now held the signed agreements in my hands. Before leaving, I took the box containing my pup's remains from the cold storage, along with the mate bond severance and lure resignation agreements and several USB drives with surveillance footage, and placed them all in the living room. My transfer papers were ready. From now on, Alpha Kale N and I would be in different territories, never to meet again. Chapter 7. Alpha Kale N, who was staying at the Pack's healing den to care for Alara, suddenly felt a huge emptiness in his chest. He frowned tightly, as if something important had quietly slipped away from his life. Alpha Kale N gripped his phone tightly and instinctively wanted to call Serafina. But just as he was about to dial, Alara bumped into him. She cried out in pain repeatedly, and Alpha Kale N's phone was crushed under her foot. That call never went through in the end. Alpha Kale N, what are you looking at? My wound hurts so much. Can you help me check it? Alara looked at Alpha Kale N with seductive eyes, grabbing his hand and guiding it toward her neckline. No matter how much Alpha Kale N liked Alara, he wasn't a beast. Alara had just had a miscarriage. How could he possibly have those kinds of thoughts? Moreover, the only feeling I had left as my hand stroked board. For some reason, his mind was now filled with images of Serafina. Alara noticed Alpha Kale N's distraction, and a flash of displeasure crossed her brow. She then asked sweetly, Alpha Kale N, why are you spacing out when you're with me? Or is it that I can no longer capture your attention? Alara reached out and tugged at Alpha Kale N's clothes a couple more times, her eyes practically overflowing with desire. Alpha Kale N didn't respond as she hoped. Instead, he sensed something strange. Alara had just miscarried. Wasn't she the least bit sad? Even if she wasn't grieving for the dead pup, her body couldn't handle these activities right now. Thinking this, Alpha Kale N looked deeply at Alara and probed indirectly. Alara, doesn't your wound hurt? Besides, our pup just passed away. Don't you feel any heartache? The moment Alpha Kale N spoke, Alara's body instantly stiffened. Only then did she realize what Alpha Kale N was concerned about. After a moment of silence, Alara changed her expression and looked up with tears in her eyes. Alpha Kale N, of course I'm heartbroken about the pup who died. My body feels awful too. But I'm so afraid you'll leave me. The pup miscarried because I was frightened. Even though Serafina was behind the rogue attack, I don't dare blame her. I'm afraid you'll blame me for not protecting the pup. Besides, I still think Serafina didn't do it on purpose. After all, she has her own pup. How could she harm mine? She must have misunderstood something to act this way. Serafina probably just wanted you to pay more attention to her. I can't blame her for that. But I was so panicked. I was afraid you'd blame me, and I wanted to plead for Serafina's forgiveness. That's why I acted this way. After all, this is all I know how to do. As she spoke, she leaned weakly against Alpha Kale N. Alpha Kale N had been reluctant to believe her words, but under Alara's tears, his heart softened. He lifted Alara horizontally and gently placed her on the bed, then kissed her cheek. Is that really how you see me? You just miscarried. No matter what the reason, I wouldn't touch you. I won't blame you either. At this point, his expression became complicated. In the end, this whole thing was Serafina's doing. If you hadn't happened to take those photos of them together, I never would have discovered it. I might have even been fooled by Serafina and felt guilty toward her. I will definitely give you justice in this matter. Don't worry. I absolutely won't let Serafina get away with this. As for everything I promised you, it all stands. What you need to do now is recover quickly so you can be ready for our marking ceremony. Under Alpha Kale N's comfort, Alara blushed and hid under the covers. Only then did Alpha Kale N smile happily. But somehow with all hell, there was still an empty feeling in his heart that nothing could fill. Over the next few days, Alpha Kalen stayed by Alara's side, caring for her in every way. Whenever Alara needed anything, he would appear immediately. He even moved his office work to Alara's bedside. All of this had once been treatment that Serafina enjoyed. Everyone at the healing den thought they had a wonderful relationship and considered Alpha Kalen a devoted mate. Alara naturally basked in all this praise. Whenever Alpha Kalen heard these comments, he would just smile without responding, even though he treated Alara with endless kindness. Only he knew that he didn't love Alara that deeply. He was just atoning for Serafina's sins. Promising Alara a marking ceremony and giving her the public title of Luna was also to atone for Serafina. Every time he heard others praise him and Alara, Alpha Kalen would tell himself that he was atoning for Serafina, not having an affair. After several days, he had completely convinced himself of this reasoning. But the longer time went on, the more he thought of Serafina. Most importantly, during all this time caring for Alara at the healing den, Serafina hadn't sent him a single message. At first, Alpha Kalen thought Serafina was just throwing a tantrum. After all, the day he left was the first time he had ever hit Serafina. It was natural for her to be angry. But as time passed, he realized something was increasingly wrong. Even when Serafina was angry, she had never gone this long without contacting him. Everything was exactly what he had wanted in the beginning. But now that Serafina truly wasn't contacting him, his heart felt like it had a huge hole in it. Alpha Kalen had always thought that even after 7 years of being mated, he and Serafina were more like family. What he felt for Serafina was more gratitude and habit. Not the passionate love he had once felt for Alara. But the longer he spent with Serafina, the more he found himself unable to control his heart. He began thinking of Serafina constantly during work hours, and would even smile just thinking about her. Alpha Kalen couldn't understand his own feelings, but he feared this loss of control would dominate him once again. He didn't know if he loved Serafina, but Alpha Kalen knew he couldn't lose her. Thinking this, Alpha Kalen opened his chat history with Serafina. He discovered that since Alara's return to the territory, his conversations with Serafina had gradually decreased. In the end, their last exchange had been a week ago. Alpha Kalen thought back and remembered that was the day he had taken Alara on the pup to the amusement park together. Thinking of that pup, thinking of how Serafina's attitude had changed since that day, Alpha Kalen suddenly looked up. He seemed to have realized something. Chapter 8. Kalen, that's the only feeling I had left. I'm being discharged today. I want to take the pup with us to pick out marking ceremony dresses. Okay? Even though this marking ceremony is just your way of compensating me, and it's not real, I still want to treat it seriously. Just then, Alara's voice suddenly came from behind, completely disrupting Kalen's train of thought. He turned around and saw Alara waiting shyly for his response. Kalen hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded under Alara's expectant gaze. Alara happily took out her phone and started selecting boutiques to visit later for marking ceremony attire. Kalen stared at his chat history with Serafina on his phone, frowning deeply. Finally, I was the only feeling I had left of my hair. He hesitantly tapped the call button. He thought that no matter what, he and Serafina were still mates. Even if Serafina had done wrong, as her mate, he should be understanding. With this thought, Kalen's heart suddenly felt lighter. He thought he should have done this earlier. The day she left, he had indeed been too harsh. Maybe when the call went through, he could apologize to Serafina. With all their years together, Serafina would surely forgive him. A hint of anticipation suddenly rose in Kalen's heart. It had been so long since he'd wanted to see Serafina this much. While selecting boutiques, Alara glanced at Kalen. Seeing the smile on his face, Alara frowned tightly. Kalen was definitely thinking about Serafina. Despite all her efforts, she still couldn't get Kalen to officially reject Serafina as his mate. She could only be the surface Luna, unable to access the real power of the Black Moon Pack. At this thought, Alara gritted her teeth in hatred. She forced a smile and squeezed in front of Kalen with her phone. Kalen, what are you looking at? These ceremonial gowns are all beautiful. Can you help me choose which ones to try on later? Alara acted coquette at this lie, holding her phone in front of Kalen. A flash of impatience crossed Kalen's eyes. Right now, he just wanted to talk to Serafina. not help Alara pick marking ceremony dresses. He reached out to push Alara aside, but his phone made a sound at that moment. Sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Because they were so close, even Alara heard this message. Kale N's eyes widened in disbelief. He never expected that Serafina's phone would be unreachable. He frowned deeply and kept dialing Serafina's number. But each time he only heard a busy tone. A flash of secret joy crossed Alara's eyes. She suppressed her smile and softened her voice. Kale N. Serafina might really be angry. Should you go back and coax her? Although Serafina was definitely wrong in this matter. She is your maid after all. If you can't coax her, let me go apologize to Serafina. As long as she's willing to forgive you, I'll do anything. It's just that if Serafina doesn't learn her lesson this time and doesn't pay any price, I'm really afraid she'll stage another attack. If Serafina attacks me, I really don't mind. But if Serafina goes after the pup again, what should we do? The pup is still so small. At this point, tears slowly slid down Alara's face, looking incredibly beautiful. Kalen couldn't help but frown. He sighed and wiped away the tears on Alara's face. When Alara first mentioned apologizing to Serafina, Kalen had been somewhat tempted. The moment he realized he couldn't contact Serafina, the panic in his heart could no longer be suppressed. But as Alara continued speaking, Kalen gradually sensed something was wrong. He lowered his eyes, thinking, if this time he really did what Alara suggested and gave in to Serafina, if he kept spoiling Serafina more and more, what if she really became blinded by jealousy? If she attacked Alara and her pup again, his mother would definitely not let her off. Even if he could protect Serafina, he would have to make more concessions to Alara. At this thought, Kalen frowned irritably. He really couldn't understand how things had gotten to this point. Noni, you can't apologize to Serafina. If she really thinks she can do such things without punishment, that would be trouble. Kalen suddenly clicked his tongue in annoyance. He didn't know why, even though he had made the right choice. His heart kept feeling terrible. I never thought she could do something so vicious. She's a pregnant she-wolf herself. So how could she attack another pregnant she-wolf? She's really not as sensible as you. Alara. Kalen was almost driven crazy by the growing unease and irritation. He suppressed all his strange feelings and gently embraced Alara. All right. Don't worry about this matter. You're the victim. There's no reason for a victim to apologize to the perpetrator. Only then did Alara wipe away her tears. Leaning weakly against Kalen and reaching up to embrace his neck, her loose hospital gown shifted with her movements, revealing glimpses of her figure. Alara still wouldn't give up. She tentatively reached up to cup Kalen's face, trying to kiss him. Kalen uncomfortably avoided her, not knowing why he couldn't accept Alara's kisses right now. But he thought that even though Serafina had done wrong, she was still his mate. In the past, his relationship with Alara had happened because of various coincidences. So from today on, he thought he should maintain his loyalty to Serafina. With this thought, he not only avoided Alara's kiss but also placed her back on the bed. I'll go handle your discharge. Didn't you want to look at marking ceremony dresses? These things take time, so I'll go take care of it now. Also, Allah's the only feeling I have left as my hands. What happened between us before was all accidental. From now on, we should keep some distance. After saying this, Kalen didn't pay attention to Alara's reaction behind him and turned to leave directly. After Kalen left, Alara angrily threw the pillow from the hospital bed to the floor. Her eyes were vicious, wishing she could kill Serafina directly. Damn Serafina, I should have killed you long ago. How dare you compete with me? Even when you're not here, you still occupy his heart. Kalen really did go handle Alara's discharge. After leaving the healing den, he took Alara and the pup directly to the boutique for marking ceremony attire. Chapter 9. Alara emerged from the dressing room, surrounded by a group of attendants serving her. Alara wore an elaborate marking ceremony gown, walking toward Kalen with a beaming smile on her face. In the next second, she casually stepped on a service worker's hand. Alpha Kalen, does this gown look good on me? I really love both this one and the previous one. How about I take both of them? The service worker beside her trembled as she covered her wound, her face full of pain. Looking at Alara's indifferent attitude, Kalen frowned deeply. He had never seen this side of Alara before. If it were Serafina, she would never do such a thing. Serafina was so kind. She would even take care of stray cats she encountered, let alone a human being like this service worker. At this thought, Kaelan couldn't help but feel disgusted with Alara. He suddenly felt that Alara was different from what he had imagined. But he still said nothing, just nodded casually, indicating that Alara should decide for herself. Nearby, as the only feeling I had left as my hands, Alara's pup also began making a fuss, demanding that the boutique staff get down on their knees so he could ride them like horses. Even with the Black Moon Pack's wealth, Kaelan could easily use money to make the staff comply willingly. But if word of this got out, it would damage the pack's reputation. Kaelan frowned as he looked at Alara. In the past, Alara would have immediately noticed Kaelan's displeasure. But now, as the only feeling I have left of my hands scrub board, having spent so much time, money was the only feeling I have left, and effort to finally reach the marking ceremony stage with Kaelan. She was simply too excited to pay attention to anything else around her. And moreover, what her pup was doing seemed perfectly normal to her. If Kaelan weren't in front of her, she might even applaud and cheer. After all, in Alara's view, these poor, ordinary people were inferior beings, born to be servants and slaves to the wealthy pack members. Her pup just wanted to ride a horse. There was nothing wrong with that. At worst, they could pay more money afterward. Kaelan took a long look at Alara, then turned and left the boutique before she could react. What Alara and the pup had done was indeed minor, but it completely destroyed their image in Kaelan's heart. No matter how hard Kaelan tried, he couldn't believe that just one marking ceremony had revealed Alara's other side. He returned to the pack house absentmindedly. He wouldn't go home until after the marking ceremony. He didn't know how to explain everything to Serafina, even though Serafina was the one who had done wrong first, and he was only trying to atone for her sins. He had still broken the promise they made when they made it. He was going to hold a marking ceremony with another she-wolf. Alara was supposed to be his first love, and this current life was what Kaelan truly wanted. But now that he had actually reached the marking ceremony stage with Alara, his heart began to ache again. Serafina truly loved him, which was why she was throwing such a big tantrum this time. At this thought, Kaelan's heart settled down again. Once the marking ceremony was over, he would go back and properly coax Serafina. If Serafina still refused to admit her mistake, he wouldn't mind lowering his head once. As long as Serafina still loved him, she would definitely forgive him. With this thought, Kaelan glanced at his phone and sat back down to work. In the days before the marking ceremony, Kaelan didn't go home again, nor did he visit Alara. For a whole week, Serafina hadn't called him once. Instead, Alara's phone calls kept coming. Ever since Kaelan left the boutique, Alara had been calling constantly. At first, Kaelan answered a few calls, but every time he picked up, Alara would cry about how she hadn't noticed his mood. Then she would bring up the masquerade pup to gain sympathy. When Kaelan ignored her, she would even badmouth Serafina. As time went on, Kaelan grew increasingly reluctant to answer Alara's calls. Now he had learned to completely ignore them. Because he hadn't received a single call from Serafina in a week, Kaelan's mood became increasingly irritable. Even though he was certain Serafina wouldn't leave him, he was still furious. It was one thing for Serafina not to call him, but she wasn't even coming to work anymore. Ever since Serafina became his assistant, Kaelan had only had her as his assistant. With Serafina on strike, many things had come to a standstill. The more Kaelan thought about it, the angrier he became. Just then, his personal aide suddenly pushed open the door. "Alpha Kaelan, there's someone downstairs looking for you. They want to confirm tomorrow's." Before the aide could finish, Kaelan immediately stood up excitedly. But quickly, he coughed and sat back down with a pretense of composure. "Is it Serafina? She hasn't come to work for so many days. It's really too much. Just let her wait downstairs." Oh. And since she hasn't been to work for so many days, has Serafina's access card been cancelled? Remember to reinstate it. Otherwise, she'll find another excuse not to come to work. Thinking of Serafina's tantrum, that was the only feeling I had left. Tantrum. Kaelan's lips curved into a smile. He knew Serafina wouldn't be able to let him go. It had been less than a month, and Serafina couldn't help but come back. With this thought, Tail Ann looked at his aide again and said, "Help me prepare some of the latest haute couture. Bags, that's the only feeling I had left of my heads. And jewelry. Send them all to this address later." He quickly recited the address of his and Serafina's home. He figured Serafina would be happy to receive these things. Even if he made her wait a bit longer now, it probably wouldn't matter. Tail Ann sat down again with dignity, preparing to work. After 10 minutes, feeling he had punished her enough, he looked up, only to find that the aide was still in his office. Tail Ann's expression immediately darkened. "Why are you still here? Didn't I tell you to go tell her? You didn't tell Serafina, did you? She must be getting impatient waiting. Go bring her up quickly." Tail Ann frowned deeply. Although Serafina had always been very patient when it came to matters involving him, what if Serafina misunderstood the situation and thought he didn't want to see her, and just left? At this thought, Tail Ann could barely contain his anger. The aide's face was full of embarrassment. He lowered his head and said somewhat awkwardly, "Alpha Tail Ann. The person downstairs looking for you isn't Serafina. It's the coordinator for your Aunt Delara's marking ceremony. He came to remind you that the marking ceremony is tomorrow." Tail Ann's face froze. For a moment, he couldn't process what the aide had said. How could it not be Serafina? What nonsense are you talking about? Go downstairs right now and bring Serafina back to work. If she leaves later, I'll hold you responsible. Tail Ann spoke with anger. He didn't believe a word of what the aide said. How could the person downstairs looking for him not be Serafina? The aide hadn't expected Tail Ann to react so strangely. He said with a bitter expression, "Alpha Tail Ann, the person downstairs really isn't Serafina. And Serafina, she resigned almost a month ago." Chapter 10. After hearing these words, Alpha Tail Ann finally couldn't hold back anymore. It was one thing for the aide to talk nonsense, saying the person downstairs wasn't Serafina. But now he dared to say Serafina had resigned. Even though they were currently in a cold war, Tail Ann was absolutely certain that Serafina would never resign. After all, their relationship wasn't something outsiders could understand. Thinking this, Tail Ann felt even more disgusted by the aide's nonsense. He suddenly threw the documents on his desk at the aide, saying coldly, "Have I been too lenient with you all lately? You actually dare to say such things to fool me? Serafina is my direct assistant. Without my signature, who in HR would dare process her resignation? I'll pretend I didn't hear what you just said. Now, get out immediately and bring Serafina up here." Tail Ann's sinister gaze made the aide tremble. But he really had no way to conjure up Serafina for Tail Ann. He could only repeat his words trembling lie. "Alpha Tail Ann, Serafina really didn't come. And she really has resigned. If you don't believe me, you can go see for yourself. HR has completed all of Serafina's resignation procedures. It's been almost a month now." At these words, Tail Ann's face turned as black as it could get. He looked down at the aide with a dark expression, then turned and headed downstairs. The ceremony coordinator downstairs saw Tail Ann coming down and immediately bowed and scraped obsequious lie. Tail Ann didn't even glance at him. He irritably looked around and found that Serafina was indeed nowhere to be seen. He turned and headed straight to the HR department. Behind him, the ceremony coordinator was frightened by Tail Ann's dark expression. Seeing him turn and leave, he didn't dare make a sound and timidly called Alara. In the HR department, Tail Ann saw Serafina's resignation agreement. It actually had his signature on it, but he was certain he had never signed this agreement. Thinking this, Tail Ann wanted nothing more than to tear up the agreement before him. He shoved the resignation agreement to the paper shredder, then said coldly to the HR manager, "I don't acknowledge this agreement. Call Serafina. I don't care what methods you use, but I don't recognize Serafina's resignation procedures. Get her back here for me." After speaking, Tail Ann turned and left without hesitation, completely ignoring the employees he had frightened into trembling. The HR manager stood behind Tail Ann with a bitter expression. Serafina's resignation procedures were completely legal and compliant. The resignation agreement she submitted did indeed have Tail Ann's authentic signature. She had been gone for almost a month, and Tail Ann was only just discovering it now. And as soon as he discovered it, he brought them such big trouble. Thinking this, that was the only feeling I had left of my hands. The HR manager was on the verge of a breakdown. Kale sat motionless in his office. He was completely unable to work. His mind was full of that signed resignation agreement. He wasn't stupid. He could recognize his own handwriting. The signature on that agreement was indeed genuine. But he really couldn't remember when he had signed it. He endured until the end of the workday, then finally couldn't stand it anymore. He floored the accelerator and rushed toward the home he shared with Serafina at top speed. On the way, he passed several red lights but had no patience to wait. He sped all the way, even making many calls to Serafina. Unfortunately, not a single call was answered. Kale grew increasingly anxious, finally even wondering if something had happened to Serafina. It wasn't until he stood in front of the pack house that his heart truly panicked. Since Serafina had moved in, this pack house had never gone dark. No matter what time Kale came home, the house was always lit, and Serafina would appear by his side the next second. For a moment, Kale felt an irrepressible pain in his chest. Serafina, what are you doing? Stop this nonsense. I won't blame you for those things anymore. And I won't make you apologize to Alara and them either. He spoke while opening the door and turning on the lights. Kale's words echoed through the pack house. But the house remained completely silent. Without Serafina, this pack house was like something dead. Kale finally couldn't maintain his composure and began searching throughout the house. Serafina, where are you? You're really going too far this time. I didn't say anything to you. So why did you resign? When exactly did you get me to sign that resignation agreement? Serafina, come out quickly. Only after searching the entire house did Kale have to admit that Serafina had really left. He walked dejectedly to the living room. In less than a month, the living room had accumulated a layer of dust, and the entire house had become somewhat dreary. Kale looked around aimlessly. Suddenly, his gaze fixed on a box sitting on the living room table. He picked up the box with trembling hands. Before opening it, a dark red booklet beneath the box caught his attention. A mate bond severance certificate? Whose mate bond severance certificate? Why would a mate bond severance certificate appear in his and Serafina's home? Enormous unease instantly swept through Kale's heart. He couldn't bring himself to open the certificate because his heart already had a premonition. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that Kale took a deep breath and opened the mate bond severance certificate with trembling hands. It clearly bore his and Serafina's names. How could this be? How could his mate bond with Serafina be severed? He had never signed a mate bond severance agreement. Unless this severance agreement had been signed together with the resignation agreement. With these two key clues, Kale finally remembered what had happened before. Those two documents, he had signed them without reading them carefully. He never expected that those two documents would take Serafina away from him. One from the company, one from his life entirely. Kale clenched his teeth. He really couldn't understand why Serafina wanted to sever their mate bond. Everything was Serafina's own fault. He hadn't done anything yet, but Serafina had thrown a tantrum first, and in the end had caused such a big mess. He shifted his gaze to the gift box. It was placed together with the mate bond severance certificate. Could it be a farewell gift from Serafina? Chapter 11. With an unknown feeling in his heart, Kale opened the wooden box. The moment he saw what was inside, Kale collapsed to the ground. Even as he fell, Kale protected the jar tightly in his arms. He squeezed his eyes shut, but tears kept streaming down his face. Even without any explanation, Kale knew what it was. A tiny pup curled up in the preserving fluid, already with small paws and features, but would never open its eyes to see this world. This was his and Serafina's child. He couldn't control himself anymore and broke down crying. This pup was his and Serafina's second child. He admitted that his intentions weren't pure when he got Serafina pregnant with this pup. But overall this time, he had developed feelings for the baby in Serafina's belly. He had prepared a new nursery in the pack house. Over several months, he had filled the room with things he bought for the pup. Kale couldn't understand why Serafina would lose their child. Why would she secretly sever their mate bond? Unable to accept it, Kale swept everything off the table. The USB Dr. Serafina left behind landed perfectly in the crack of the sofa. Kale carefully placed the box down and looked at the pup inside, tears flowing silently. Why be so heartless? Kale kept calling Serafina, but none of the calls went through. He collapsed, covering his head with his hands, feeling more pain than ever before. Just then, a pair of hands suddenly reached over and wrapped around Kaelin's neck. Kaelin's eyes suddenly lit up. Serafina, you finally came back. Why did you? Kaelin turned around eagerly. But what he saw wasn't Serafina as he expected, but Alara. How did you get in? When did you come in? What are you doing here? Kaelin fired off questions at Alara. Alara didn't expect Kaelin to be so agitated. She couldn't help but step back. She said quietly, you gave me the access code before and said I could come anytime. After questioning her, Kaelin seemed drained of all energy and looked away expressionlessly. After confirming Kaelin wouldn't lose it again, Alara slowly approached him and asked with confusion, Kaelin, what's wrong with you? Kaelin completely ignored Alara. He stared blankly at the wooden box and made Bond's severance certificate on the table, saying nothing. Alara followed his gaze and immediately saw the pup in the severance certificate. In that instant, she could barely contain her smile. She never expected Serafina to cut off all her own advantages. Now she no longer had to worry about not becoming Kaelin's chosen mate. Thinking of this, Alara almost laughed out loud. She pretended to comfort Kaelin. Kaelin. Serafina really went too far this time. How could she lose her own pup? I want a pup so badly but can't have one. Yet she doesn't treasure it at all. As Alara spoke, she reached out to comfort Kaelin. Kaelin must be feeling lost and angry at Serafina right now. If she comforted Kaelin and stayed by his side at this moment, the position of his chosen mate would definitely be hers. Thinking of the Black Moon Pack's enormous power, Alara's smile stretched to her dimples. Shut up. Kaelin showed no kindness to Alara's attempt at comfort, even flashing a hint of disgust. Seeing the look in Kaelin's eyes, Alara paused, anger flashing in her eyes. In her view, Kaelin completely didn't appreciate her kindness. Alara gritted her teeth and forced another smile. Kaelin, I just wanted to care about you. I didn't expect Serafina to do this either. If you really mind and want her back, then I'll go apologize to her. As Alara spoke, she suddenly choked up. Like before, she used the same trick of playing the victim. Alara peeked at Kaelin through her fingers, expecting him to jump out and stop her like before. But Kaelin remained silent, just staring blankly at the wooden box on the table. Alara was furious. The trick that always worked before was now completely useless. In her view, Kaelin was just being dramatic. It wasn't like he hadn't personally killed a pup he had with Serafina before. Now it was just another lost child. Yet it made Kaelin so distraught. When Kaelin gave his daughter's needed heart to her son, she didn't see him acting like he was dying. She glared at Kaelin with some resentment, and fighting her disgust, wanted to throw away the wooden box on the table. The moment she approached the box, Kaelin finally reacted. He suddenly grabbed Alara and threw her aside, saying angrily, "Get out." Alara felt extremely wronged. Since she came back, when had she ever received such treatment from Kaelin? Even when she first returned and Kaelin still had a bad impression of her, he would at most look at her coldly and sneer. Later, with just a few explanations from her, Kaelin believed her without hesitation. Why did he suddenly seem like a different person? Alara dug her nails into her arm, swallowing her anger and grievance to speak again. Kaelin, this pup is already gone. Should we bury it? It's not good for you to keep looking at it like this. Since Serafina could do such a thing, it shows she doesn't care about you at all. Just forget her and live well with me. Okay? Alara spoke gently. She did have her own selfish motives. But keeping this pup here really wasn't good either. Unfortunately, Kaelin didn't appreciate Alara's good intentions. He looked at Alara with red eyes, the coldness in his gaze like ice, forcing Alara to step back. Get out. Don't make me say it a second time. His voice was cold and piercing, freezing Alara who was about to speak. Finally, under Kaelin's stare, Alara could only leave reluctantly. After Alara left, Kaelin numbly dialed Serafina's number again. The phone gave the same busy signal as always. Finally, he couldn't hold back anymore and covered his face, crying out in pain. Chapter 12. From the very beginning, my father had opposed my relationship with Alpha Kaelin. Back then, Alpha Kaelin and Alara's romance was the talk of the Pack territories. Everyone knew how much Alpha Kaelin loved Alara. My father said he understood alpha male's nature. Even if Alara had betrayed Alpha KLN, his feelings for her weren't necessarily pure hatred. Even if Alpha KLN was with me now, as long as Alara came back, she would still be a huge problem for me. What's more, my father could see that Alpha KLN didn't really like me that much back then. It was more like unrequited love on my part. He was truly worried that I would be hurt in this relationship. But at that time, I was blinded by love. I couldn't think about anything else. After we became mates, Alpha KLN had always been good to me. I thought I had made the right bet, that my father's words weren't entirely correct. But after Alara came back, I realized my father had been absolutely right. He understood Alpha KLN's heart better than I did. Thinking of this, I slowly walked out of the airport with my luggage. The moment my father saw me, his eyes turned red. When I got pregnant with my second pup, I had already told my father. He knew that if the pup in my belly was still there, it would be almost 7 months old now. But now, my stomach was completely flat. The child had obviously been lost. Serafina, you silly child. Why did you hurt your own body? It was your flesh and blood too. Even if Alpha KLN didn't want it, couldn't we have kept it ourselves? Look how thin you've become. It's breaking your father's heart. I thought that after almost a month, I had nearly accepted the death of that pup. But seeing my father's heartbroken expression, I finally couldn't hold back and burst into tears. Dad. My father was extremely anxious. After wiping the tears from my face, he kept comforting me. What did Alpha KLN do to you? How did he make you suffer like this? Tell me, and I won't let him get away with it. Seeing my father's serious expression, I knew that if I told him everything, he would be furious and would stop at nothing to get revenge for me. But this was ultimately the hatred between Alpha KLN and me. I should handle it myself, not drag my father into this spiral of revenge. Besides, my father had loved my daughter dearly. When she died, he had fallen seriously ill. If he knew that both my daughter and the pup in my belly had died because of Alpha KLN, he would probably blame himself for everything. Thinking of this, I swallowed all my pain. I wouldn't let Alpha KLN and Dalar get away with this. But this revenge should be mine to carry out, and not something that would cost my father his peaceful retirement. It's nothing. After I take over the Sunstone Pack, I'll settle things with Alpha KLN. You've grown up. But how I wish you didn't have to. My father looked at me with both pride and heartache. No matter what, I'm still your father. You can rely on me instead of bearing everything alone. I understood what he meant, but I could never go back to how things were before. After returning home, I slept deeply for 2 days. My father was extremely worried and called in many pack healers. They all said I was exhausted from too much stress and hadn't rested properly in a long time. I just needed a few days of good rest without too much disturbance. Hearing this, my father finally understood somewhat how much I had suffered at Alpha KLN's hands. In his fury, he immediately wanted to use all of the Sunstone Pack's power to get revenge on Alpha KLN. But remembering what I had said when I got off the plane, he hesitated. In the end, he sighed and decided to leave the chance for personal revenge to me. After I woke up, my father hid everything, concealing all his worry. But I knew these past few days must have been tortuous for him. After spending a few days with my father, I naturally began taking over the Sunstone Pack. Thanks to all those years as Alpha KLN's Luna at the Black Moon Pack. Even though I had never handled the Sunstone Pack's affairs before, everything seemed simple now. In just a few weeks, I secured several alliances and major territorial agreements, greatly strengthening the Sunstone Pack's position. At the celebration gathering, everyone was happy and excited, drinking and dancing. I just stood on the terrace, looking far toward where the Black Moon Pack territory was located. Although Alpha KLN had once fallen on hard times, with my substantial support, he had quickly developed the Black Moon Pack into a thriving territory. Plus, he was a natural-born alpha himself. Before I left, the Black Moon Pack had already surpassed the Sunstone Pack to some extent. From the moment I learned the truth, I hadn't stopped hating Alpha KLN and Dalara for even a moment. That pain burned in my heart, keeping me awake night after night. But I knew that the Sunstone Pack wasn't ready to confront the Black Moon Pack head-on yet. Because I didn't just represent myself, I was the Sunstone Pack's alpha. I couldn't throw away the interests and livelihoods of so many Sunstone Pack members for my personal vendetta. I had to become stronger. Strong enough to crush the Black Moon Pack at will. Strong enough to pay back all the pain my pup and I had suffered. Thinking of this, my eyes darkened. I believe that day wouldn't be far off. After working overtime at the pack house for a month straight, my father finally couldn't stand it anymore. He dragged me to a restaurant to help me relax. Although I felt I could still keep going, it was my father's kind intention, so I got in the car. When we arrived at the restaurant, I was surprised to find a young man sitting with my father. For a moment, I froze. I was the only feeling, not knowing whether to go forward. While I was thinking, my father had already seen me. He waved me over. So I had no choice but to walk over. Serafina, let me introduce you. This is the newly appointed young Alpha Darius of the Silvermoon Pack. You're both young alphas who just took over packs. I thought you might have things to talk about, my father said cheerfully. I immediately understood his meaning. But right now, I really didn't have the mind for such things. Thinking of this, I prepared to just go through the motions. But then my father gave me an expectant look. I understood he wanted me to use this opportunity to relax properly. Thinking of this, I sighed quietly to myself and sat down anyway. Young Alpha Darius was a very handsome man with refined features and a gentle, steady temperament. No wonder my father had introduced him to me. Perhaps because I hadn't spoken for too long, Darius understood my meaning. He took the initiative to extend his hand to me, his smile warm and gentle. Hello, I'm Darius. I've often heard Alpha Ronan mention his wonderful daughter. Now I see that Alpha Ronan was actually being modest in his praise. For some reason, hearing his voice, I suddenly froze. A distant memory was suddenly awakened. Chapter 13. The reason I loved Alpha Kale and so blindly wasn't because he was particularly wonderful. As the heir of the Sunstone Pack and an only daughter, I had met thousands of excellent alphas. While Alpha Kale ranked among them, he wasn't the most outstanding. The reason I looked at him differently, and eventually fell in love with him, was simply because he had once saved me. During a trip to neutral territory, I was kidnapped along with a little boy by rogue wolves. When I was panicking, that little boy comforted me. He even bravely stepped forward at the end to take my place as a hostage. I was rescued, and my father told me that the little boy was taken away by the Black Moon Pack. Alpha Kale was the heir of the Black Moon Pack. That's why when I returned home and discovered the Black Moon Pack was in crisis, I didn't hesitate to invest a large sum of money and resources. At first, I only wanted to repay his kindness. But later, under Alpha Kale's pursuit, I gradually fell in love with him. I never doubted that Alpha Kale was that little boy. But now's the only feeling I have left out. Looking at Alpha Darius, I suddenly felt uncertain. Though his voice was different from that little boy's, his way of speaking, his pauses, and even that gentle temperament were remarkably similar. But Alpha Darius was from the Silvermoon Pack. He had no connection to the Black Moon Pack at all. That little boy couldn't be him. With this thought, I pulled my mind back and politely shook Alpha Darius's hand. Hello, Alpha Darius. My father has mentioned you before. He said you're young and promising, talented and handsome. Meeting you today, I see his words were true. After hearing my words, Alpha Darius's smile somehow became even brighter. Before I could say anything else, my father cheerfully handed me the menu, and so began an awkward meal. I thought Alpha Darius and I would have nothing to talk about. But surprisingly, we got along very well. We even shared quite a few common interests. At first, I was suspicious. How could it be such a coincidence? Everything I liked, Alpha Darius could relate to. But then I thought about it more. This wasn't really strange. After all, the Silvermoon Pack was far more powerful than the Sunstone Pack. If I were the alpha of the Silvermoon Pack, the Black Moon Pack would have fallen long ago. Alpha Darius had no reason to go out of his way to get close to me. A mere alpha of the smaller Sunstone Pack. With this realization, I instantly felt at ease. Only after I let down my guard did I discover that Alpha Darius truly shared these interests with me. The joy in his eyes wasn't fake. By the end of the meal, Alpha Darius and I had exchanged phone numbers and become fairly good friends. On the way back, my father glanced at me a couple of times, testing the waters. What do you think of young Alpha Darius? Though he just took over the Silver Moon Pack, he's doing very well. You could say the Silver Moon Pack is now his domain. Despite leading such a large pack, he has a good personality and acts very steadily. Though I had gotten along well with Alpha Darius just now, I still hadn't changed my mind. I truly didn't want to start another relationship right now. With this thought, I spoke up. Dad, I really don't want to start another relationship right now. It's not that Alpha Darius isn't good, I just don't have the energy to think about these things. Seeing my father hesitate to speak, I repeated myself once more. Right now, I only wanted to quickly bring the Black Moon Pack back to its state before I invested in it. Even if the little boy who saved me as a child was Alpha KLN, the 2 lives he owed me were enough to repay that debt. I looked once more in the direction of the Black Moon Pack territory and made up my mind again. At least before I successfully got my revenge on Alpha KLN, I wouldn't start a second relationship. My father could see my determination. He sighed softly and said, "In the past, I always wanted to protect you. But I forgot that the most protected flowers are always the first to break in storms. I'm happy that you have this fighting spirit, but it also pains me. I failed as a father. Back then, I shouldn't have let you mate with Alpha KLN." Seeing the bitter smile on my father's face, my heart ached. I knew that if I told my father everything, he would feel sorry for me. But I hadn't expected that even without telling him everything, my father would still take all the responsibility upon himself. "Dad, this isn't your fault. I was too stubborn back then. I should have listened to you." My words didn't make my father smile. He still frowned tightly. Then, as if thinking of something, he looked at me seriously and said, "I don't know what you went through with Alpha KLN, but I will help you. I've already handed the Sunstone Pack over to you, and you've been managing it very well during this time. I'll give you all my connections and capable warriors. You're my daughter. Whatever you want to do, I will always support you." Hearing this, my nose tingled and I almost cried. A few days later, my father handed over all his resources to me. After that day, Alpha Darius contacted me frequently, though I had no intention of developing any relationship with him. But Alpha Darius didn't pursue me romantically either. We gradually became good friends, and Alpha Darius even offered several territorial alliance opportunities. Just like that, the Sunstone Pack slowly began to grow. Chapter 14. On the day Alpha KLN and Alara held their marking ceremony, Elder Genevieve invited everyone from the territory's elite pack society. Once the marking ceremony began, she couldn't stop smiling in the audience. She happily chatted with everyone, and seeing her eldest grandson dressed as a flower boy made her even more delighted. Alpha KLN had originally wanted just a simple marking ceremony, but under Elder Genevieve's arrangements, this ceremony became extraordinarily grand. The news of Alpha KLN and my secret mating was known only to the Black Moon Pack members. No one else knew about it. So all the ceremony guests thought Alara had finally made it to the top, even though she had chosen to leave Alpha KLN without hesitation when the Black Moon Pack went through its crisis. But the power of a first love was still enormous. Look, after giving Alpha KLN a pup, Alara had still secured the position of Luna. Alpha KLN listened to the whispered conversations of the people present, his brow slowly furrowing. He didn't want to make this marking ceremony too big of a spectacle, even though he had said he would give Alara the public position of Luna as compensation. But deep down, he still didn't want it to be too high profile. From the beginning, he had strongly opposed Elder Genevieve making this ceremony so grand. But under Elder Genevieve's insistence and Alara's tears, Alpha KLN had given in. Alara had pleaded through her heirs, KLN, "As long as you hold this marking ceremony with me, whatever happens between you and Serafina afterward is fine. I won't interfere. I just want to give the pup an identity. I don't want him to live his whole life with the stigma of being illegitimate." After hearing this, Alpha KLN fell silent. Ever since I had left behind that pup, Alpha KLN had been trapped in bloody nightmares every day. He could no longer bear to let his only remaining pup suffer any grievances. Thinking of this, Alpha KLN silently agreed. He thought that once this marking ceremony was over, he would have repaid the debt I owed. From then on, I would owe Alara nothing. As long as he explained it to me, I would surely understand his good intentions. At worst, he could give me more compensation later, after we remated. We could move out and live a good life together. Alpha Kale N had already decided he wouldn't ask me for pups anymore. Perhaps the previous pup had left me with trauma, which was why I chose to abort the baby at this time. As for our first pup, Alpha Kale N did feel guilty. Thinking of these things, Alpha Kale N's expression darkened. Just then was the only feeling. The marking ceremony officially began. Alpha Kale N took a deep breath and prepared to enter. This ceremony venue was exactly the same as what he and Alara had discussed when they were young. Alara's favorite color scheme, Alara's favorite flower arrangements, everything was just like Alara herself. Tightly surrounding Alpha Kale N, he felt somewhat suffocated. The closer he got to the ceremonial path, the stronger Alpha Kale N's feeling of suffocation became. For some reason, my image kept echoing in his mind. Standing at the end of the ceremonial path, the marking music began to play. Elder Genevieve's expression was extremely satisfied, and his and Alara's pup kept scattering flower petals. Alara, dressed in a ceremonial gown, slowly walked from the entrance, her face full of smiles. Alpha Kale N knew that with his current stern expression, any people would find it strange. But he really couldn't smile. He suddenly remembered when he mated with me years ago. We had simply completed the mate bond, not even holding a ceremony. The Black Moon Pack was really struggling then. He had thought that once things got better, he would hold a proper marking ceremony with me. But until now, he had never held a ceremony with me. And from today on, even his position as Luna would be occupied by Alara. Thinking of this, Alara in the distance became hideous in Alpha Kale N's eyes. Alara slowly approached until Alara's father, with a fawning smile, placed Alara's hand in Alpha Kale N's. Only then did he snap back to reality. The officiant handed the marking pendant to Alpha Kale N, signaling him to place it on the bride. Alara also waited shyly for Alpha Kale N to place the pendant on her neck and vow to love her, ever without changing his heart. Alpha Kale N gripped the pendant tightly in his hand. After a moment of silence, he finally threw the pendant away and said expressionlessly, "I'm sorry. I cannot fulfill my promise. The position of Luna can only belong to Serafina." Alpha Kale N released Alara's hand. He couldn't place the pendant on Alara's neck, even though he and I were already separated. Even though he had promised Alara. After hearing Alpha Kale N's words clearly, Alara's expression instantly stiffened. She looked at Alpha Kale N in disbelief and said, "Kale N, you promised me." Alpha Kale N looked at Alara's face and frowned tightly. "I did promise you. But now, I can't go through with this ceremony." After saying this, he threw down the pendant and turned to leave without caring about anything else. Right now, he just wanted to find me. No matter what kind of person I was, Alpha Kale N accepted it all. Even if I was so vicious, repeatedly targeting Alara, even causing the death of Alara's pup, even if I had aborted our own pup. But Alpha Kale N couldn't deny that he had fallen in love with me. Over all these years, he had uncontrollably fallen in love with me. Alpha Kale N's eyes instantly lit up. At this moment, he finally saw clearly into his own heart. Alpha Kale N hadn't taken his steps before Elder Genevieve blocked his way with others. She looked at Alpha Kale N with a livid expression. "Kale N, what are you doing? With so many people here, if you leave now, what will others think of Alara? What about the pup?" Elder Genevieve pointed to his and Alara's pup. The guests below, seeing this absurd scene, also began to gossip. What's going on? Why is Alpha Kale N running away from his marking ceremony at this moment? Exactly. Look how the bride is about to cry. I really don't know why they would do something so undignified. They even have a pup together. Since they plan to give her a proper status, why cause such a scene here? Alara won't be able to show her face in public after this. Under Elder Genevieve's obstruction and the surrounding guests' gossip, Alpha Kale N's departing steps became slower and slower. Finally, he stopped and stood still. Elder Genevieve immediately understood that Alpha Kale N was still planning to give Alara some dignity. She quickly pushed Alara, signaling her to hurry and coax Alpha Kale N. Alara couldn't care about being angry. She forced a smile and pleaded, "Kale N, if you leave now, I really don't know what to do. I know what you're thinking. If you're worried about Serafina misunderstanding, we can announce our separation in a few years after the ceremony. Okay? Just give me some dignity." Give the pup some dignity. Let the pup have a good status so he won't be mocked by others. If you mate with Serafina, I'm willing to let her raise the pup, as long as she treats the child well. At the end, Alara gritted her teeth and raised the stakes. Of course, the only feeling I had left, of course. She could never actually let me raise her pup. I would never agree to raise Alara's pup either. If I knew the truth from back then, I would probably want to tear both her and the pup apart. How could Alara feel safe leaving her pup with a ticking time bomb? But she also knew what Alpha Kalen really cared about. Sure enough, as soon as she said this, Alpha Kalen immediately stopped in his tracks. Chapter 15. Elder Genevieve understood her son's thoughts. She turned to face the guests below and said, "I'm so sorry." The young couple had a little spat before the marking ceremony, which has made everyone here witness this embarrassing scene. However, their relationship is still very good. Everyone here has watched our Kalen and Delara grow up together. So please give this young couple a little more understanding. I announce that the marking ceremony will continue. Alpha Kalen walked forward like a puppet, holding Aldera's hand. Standing at the end of the ceremonial path, the officiant once again handed over the marking pendant. After Alpha Kalen took it, he seemed to see my determined figure walking away in a trance. He reflexively reached out to try to hold me back, but was firmly grasped by Alara. Alara was truly frightened. If Alpha Kalen caused another scene of running away from the marking ceremony, she would really have no way to survive in the Pack Territory's social circle. Alpha Kalen stiffly placed the marking pendant around Alara's neck. Applause immediately erupted from the audience below. Amid the cheers, Alara brought her lips closer. Alpha Kalen numbly kissed her. With this, all the marking ceremony procedures were completed. In the following time, Alpha Kalen used all of the Black Moon Pack's resources to search for traces of me. But every report he received was disappointing. After this marking ceremony, Alara acted as if she had received some kind of permission and began openly coming and going from the Black Moon Pack house. Elder Genevieve was naturally delighted to see this. Under Elder Genevieve's indulgence, the traces that once belonged to me became fewer and fewer. And because Alpha Kalen was busy searching for me, plus he didn't want to go home since I was no longer there, he remained unaware of these changes. Until now, Alpha Kalen still didn't know about any of this. On this day, Alpha Kalen once again received his assistant's report of finding nothing. He had heard such answers too many times. From initial rage to now, he just expressionlessly told his assistant to keep looking. No matter how much of the Black Moon Pack's resources, money, or connections it cost, he just wanted to find me. He had already buried the pup next to our daughter. He knew that I must be hiding because I was too heartbroken, or perhaps too angry after learning about his marking ceremony with Alara. That's why I kept hiding and refusing to see him. But he would never give up on me. He would definitely find me and mate with me. Just then, Alpha Kalen's phone suddenly rang. After answering, he found it was the pack house steward. The reason the steward called was simply because he found a USB drive in the living room while cleaning. Alpha Kalen frowned tightly, feeling that after I left, even the steward had become increasingly unreliable. He was about to tell him not to come to work tomorrow, but suddenly thought, this USB drive might be something I left behind. Maybe it contained memories of our time together. Thinking of this, Alpha Kalen changed his mind. Bring the USB drive over. After hanging up, Alpha Kalen once again stared at the documents in front of him in a daze. Just then, there was suddenly a commotion at the door. Calls of Luna, with the only feeling I have left is my hands. Luna echoed in Alpha Kalen's ears. Although he knew it was impossible, he couldn't help but look toward the door. Indeed, no one at the company knew about his relationship with me. But what if? What if I had returned at this moment? The figure in the distance was blurry. Alpha Kalen's eyes flashed, as if he really saw me coming back. He hurried out, shouting with a hint of resentment, "You finally know to come back." Everyone around immediately turned their attention to Alpha Kalen. Several employees said with smiles, "Alpha Kalen and his Luna have such a good relationship. He even comes out to greet her for just these few steps." The figure turned around in delight upon hearing Alpha Kalen's voice. "Kalen, I could have gone in by myself. Why did you come out to greet me?" Alpha Kalen looked carefully and realized the person in front of him wasn't me at all, but Alara. Since getting marked, Elara had dressed extremely lavishly. Elder Genevieve loved her for giving birth to a grandson and had given her many luxury items. Ever since the marking ceremony, Elara had been incredibly smug. In her view, I had wisely left on my own. The position of Luna, even if it wasn't hers now, couldn't escape her grasp. She had completely relaxed her guard. Just as she finished saying those words with a smile, Alpha Kale suddenly turned and went back to his office, and not giving Elara any face at all. Left behind the point, Elara watched Alpha Kale's cold back, her smile freezing. The other employees around her looked at each other in confusion. Finally, under someone's lead, they tactfully left Elara's side. Noticing this, Elara's face twisted with anger. But to maintain what remained of her status, she still forced a smile and walked into Alpha Kale's office. As soon as she entered, she noticed the photo frame on Alpha Kale's desk, which clearly contained my picture. A flash of hatred crossed Elara's eyes. She knew this wasn't the first time she had come to Alpha Kale's office these past few days. But every time she came, she could see Alpha Kale holding this photo frame. She had secretly arranged for people to get rid of this photo frame. But Alpha Kale seemed to have countless photos of me. When one frame was thrown away, another would appear. In the end, all the people Elara had found were fired, and nearly half of her planted informants were lost. Thinking of this, Elara gritted her teeth in anger. Before she could speak, Alpha Kale frowned at her. Why do you keep coming to my office for no reason? Get out. What we agreed on was just to give you dignity. It hasn't reached this level. Elara, you've gone too far. Alpha Kale stared coldly at Elara, his eyes full of disgust. Elara shivered under Alpha Kale's gaze. Her eyes immediately reddened as she looked straight at Alpha Kale and said, Kale, I just wanted to see you. You really don't like me anymore. You won't even see me. I don't ask for any status. I just want to stay by your and the pup's side. Our son hasn't seen you for a long time. He says he misses his daddy. I know that our pup and I together don't hold as high a place in your heart as Serafina alone. But I still want to stay by your side. Now it seems, Kale, you don't need me anymore. It's time for me to leave. With that, she turned and ran out, thinking this retreat strategy would move Alpha Kale. But she didn't expect that after running out, no one came to bring her back. Elara stood downstairs at the company, glaring hatefully at the location of Alpha Kale's office, not knowing whether to leave or stay. Chapter 16. Meanwhile, Alpha Kale upstairs paid no attention to her departure and directly opened the USB drive. As soon as the USB drive opened, a recording began to play. While Alpha Kale was still wondering what was happening, he heard a familiar voice. It turned out that when he was dealing with that greedy pack healer, I had been listening nearby. I had heard how he switched our daughter's heart, how he bribed our daughter's attending healer, and how he caused our daughter's death. Alpha Kale finally lost control and suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. These past days, in order to find me, he had worked tirelessly without sleep or rest, already torturing his body to its limits. Combined with this bombshell news, was the only feeling I have left as my hands. It completely crushed Alpha Kale. He couldn't dare imagine how heartbroken I must have been when I learned these truths. But he really hadn't done it on purpose. At the time, he mistakenly thought our daughter's surgery hadn't started yet. He believed that if they could just hold on a little longer, she would be able to wait for a second heart. But Alpha Kale never expected that our daughter's surgery had already begun, and his actions directly led to our daughter's death. After the recording finished, more content appeared on the USB drive. Alpha Kale looked through it bit by bit and found a Rogat Act report and a miscarriage certificate from the pack's healing den. Both documents bore the same date, followed by a screenshot of Mind Link records. Only then did Alpha Kale realize that on the day he had softened his heart, blocked our mate bond, and went out to play with Elara and her son, I had actually been attacked by rogues. Even that pup had died on that very day. It turned out he had killed both of our pups. After seeing this truth clearly, Alpha Kale instantly aged several years. The USB drive also contained the truth about the kidnapping case. The photo Elara had shown Alpha Kale was just a misleading angle. I had never spoken to the scarred rogue at all. So naturally I wouldn't have conspired with him about the kidnapping. Who had orchestrated this kidnapping was now crystal clear. After Alpha Kale N finished viewing all of Alar's various schemes against me on the USB drive, he understood everything. He called his assistant and asked him to investigate everything Alara had done in the past 6 months. He wanted him to investigate the reason why Alara had returned to the territory. He waited until after work and finally got the truth about everything. It turned out Alara had returned to the territory simply because her family pack had gone bankrupt, and her extravagant and dissolute lifestyle in neutral territories could no longer continue. After returning, she had seen that Alpha Kale N had rebuilt the Black Moon pack, so she changed her face and latched onto Alpha Kale N again. All his suspicions about me were misunderstandings. I had never harmed Alara. Instead, it was he and Alara, one blind, one vicious, who had killed both of our pups, and still firmly believed it was all my doing. Thinking of this, Alpha Kale N almost laughed until he cried. He had thought he didn't love me, that his feelings for me were only gratitude. So when Alara returned, he had half-heartedly gotten back together with her. But only after I left did he realize that his love for me had long since seeped into his very bones without him noticing. He was an idiot, a bastard who had betrayed me while thinking he was some kind of righteous hero. He was wrong. I'm sorry, truly sorry. He spoke in a hoarse voice, constantly banging his head against the desk, not knowing to whom he was apologizing. But the person who truly needed to see this had already left. Looking at Alara's arrogant smile in the video, Alpha Kale N's eyes slowly darkened. He was indeed at fault. But Alara couldn't escape her own punishment either. Soon, under Alpha Kale N's orders, Alara was ruthlessly captured. She tried to resist, but was met with merciless slaps. By the time Alara was brought before Alpha Kale N, she was already unrecognizable. When Alara saw Alpha Kale N, she began struggling again after having stopped. TLN, save me quickly. Aren't these your pack warriors? Just now they. Before Alara could finish speaking, Alpha Kale N's meaningful glance resulted in another slap to her face. This slap from the warrior was heavy, directly knocking out one of Alara's teeth. She looked at Alpha Kale N in disbelief, only to be met with his cold expression. Alara, why did you frame Serafina? Haven't I given you enough? Our son wasn't sick at all. Why did you make me steal the heart? When he reached this point, Alpha Kale N's voice couldn't help but choke up. He really hadn't expected that he had sacrificed our daughter's life to save someone who wasn't even sick. And this pup wasn't even his. After hearing Alpha Kale N's words, Alara's heart sank, but instinct still made her pretend ignorance. Kale N, that was the only feeling I had left if I had. What are you talking about? I don't know anything. Did Serafina badmouth me to you again? How could I possibly lie to you about our son being sick? As Alara spoke, tears welled up in her eyes again. Alpha Kale N wasn't swayed by her words at all. Instead, the warrior beside him slapped her face again and again. At first, Alara still tried to argue back, but in the end, instead of Alpha Kale N's repentant embrace, she was met with the warrior's merciless slaps. Finally, she couldn't even speak a single word. Only then did Alpha Kale N throw all the evidence at her. Looking at the documents before her, Alara understood that Alpha Kale N truly knew everything. She lost her earlier defiance and tearfully begged Alpha Kale N to give her a chance. Kale N, I did all this because I love you. Now if the only feeling I had left of Layad scrub bored. Serafina can't come back anyway. You and I can live well together. Okay? Due to the wounds on her face, Alara could only make unclear sounds. But even so, who was the only feeling I had left as my hands? She was still trying to manipulate Alpha Kale N. Hearing Alara's words, Alpha Kale N understood that even now, this woman still didn't think she had done anything wrong. He waved his hand. Take this woman away. As long as you don't let her die. You can't torture her however you want. Oh, and pull out her tongue. As for her family pack, withdraw all the conveniences I previously gave them. I want them to return to their original state. After speaking, he turned and walked away without hesitation. Behind him, Alara let out a miserable scream after hearing his words. She looked desperately at Alpha Kale N's retreating figure and uttered vicious curses. Chapter 17. Alpha Kale N, do you think you're some kind of clean person? The one who wronged Serafina the most, isn't that you? When it comes down to it, the one who deserves to die most is you. As long as Serafina is a mother, she will never forgive a murderer who killed her two children. You two will never be together again in this lifetime. Hearing Elara's curse, Alpha Kalen felt as if his heart was blocked. He knew all too well that Elara's words were right, he was the real culprit. But Alpha Kalen was utterly unwilling to believe the fact that I would truly never forgive him. The thought of never being able to see me again for the rest of his life made Alpha Kale and want to tear his heart out to stop the pain. In the following time, Alpha Kale continued searching for traces of me while punishing himself like a form of self-torture. He stayed awake day and night, constantly searching for any sign of me. But every time, all that awaited him was disappointment. Only when his body couldn't hold up anymore would Alpha Kale briefly fall into unconsciousness. He persisted, not letting himself die early, only because he wanted to apologize and atone to me in person. Another half-year passed like this, and the Black Moon Pack began to be targeted by a mysterious force. Due to his physical condition, Alpha Kalen had almost no power to fight back against this fierce, mysterious force. Moreover, a lot of evidence of Alpha Kalen's crimes appeared online. What finally made Alpha Kalen understand who was behind it all was the recording he had heard on that USB drive. The Black Moon Pack gradually fell, and Alpha Kalen lost his protection. This time, there was no Serafina falling from the sky to save him. He would soon be imprisoned along with the bankruptcy of the Black Moon Pack. After understanding who was targeting him, Alpha Kalen completely stopped struggling. He waited for the coming prison sentence. Alpha Kalen's only thought now was to see me one more time before going in. He waited patiently and sadly. I saw Alpha Kalen again at the scene of his arrest. Due to the guilt he felt for the crimes he had committed, plus the fact that the Black Moon Pack had fallen far behind the Sunstone Pack's development over this past year. So when facing the Sunstone Pack's attack, Alpha Kalen showed no ability to fight back. About this, I only felt happy. I didn't know if Alpha Kalen would feel guilty or remorseful when he saw the things I left behind. But because of him, I lost 2 children. This hatred, I never gave up on it from beginning to end. I didn't give up any opportunity. Even without developing a romantic relationship with Alpha Darius, I still shamelessly took on many projects from the Silver Moon Pack. All of this was just to strengthen the Sunstone Pack's power, so I could complete my revenge against Alpha Kalen as soon as possible. Finally, through my constant accumulation, the Sunstone Pack had grown strong enough to stand against the Black Moon Pack. From that moment on, I continuously sent information online domestically. I knew that although Alpha Kalen and Delara had held a marking ceremony, they still hadn't completed their mate bond, though I wasn't clear about the reason. Using this, I instigated Alara's family pack to do many things. But it was also because Alara's family pack was inherently greedy. Plus, Alpha Kalen thought he could control this greedy hyena pack, which gave me the opportunity to take advantage. Having worked at the Black Moon Pack for many years, I completely understood the Black Moon Pack's structure. Using Elara's family pack, I planted many spies in the Black Moon Pack. I also understood that after Elara's family joined, the Black Moon Pack not only didn't become stronger, but actually became much worse than before. I wasn't clear why, but this didn't stop me from taking advantage of this point. I started with small things, bit by bit shaking this sleeping giant that was the Black Moon Pack. After confirming they had finally fallen into my trap, I massively released the evidence I had collected online. In the past, these vague pieces of evidence would have been discovered by the Black Moon Pack before they were even released. Even I, the person behind it all, would have been immediately caught. But now, they no longer had the power to face my attack. Due to Elder Genevieve's repeated requests, Alpha Kalen still held a press conference, preparing to clarify the recent rumors online. It was at this moment that I felt the time had come. Leading a large group of police, I rudely charged directly into the Black Moon Pack's press conference. The moment he saw me, Alpha Kalen's eyes immediately turned red. Ignoring everyone present and completely unable to see the police behind me, he rushed straight to my front. He reached out his hand, trembling as he tried to touch my face, but I mercilessly slapped it away. Serafina, you finally appeared. I've been waiting for you for so long. I really waited for you for a very long time. I'm sorry about the children and all those past events. It's all my fault. He held back his sobs, constantly apologizing to me. But I felt his apologies were far too hypocritical and shallow. If Alpha Kale truly felt guilty, then without waiting for me to make a move against him, he would have ended his own life. I looked him up and down with unfriendly eyes. I could see that he had indeed not been living well during this time. Even though he had been well dressed for today's press conference, I could still see his exhaustion from his reddened eyes. Not only that, Alpha Kale had lost at least 20 pounds. From his previously just right sturdy build, he had become a thin shadow of a person. When the press conference first started, Alpha Kale's eyes were dull and lifeless, like fallen stars, completely lacking his former alpha presence. Only after seeing me did he regain some semblance of humanity. After confirming he had been living poorly during this time, I let out a cold laugh. Alpha Kale, seeing that you've been living badly makes me really happy. You should rot in the mud together with Alara. Don't even think about holding this press conference today. Go with the police. All those things you did, all the harm you caused me, it all needs to be repaid. My eyes held no trace of former love, only endless coldness. Alpha Kale stared blankly into my eyes and suddenly began dropping large tears. The next moment, he knelt directly in front of me. He kept banging his head hard against the ground until it was bloody. But he didn't stop. During the time I was gone, he had relied on this kind of intense pain countless times to remind himself to stay alive, until he could see me and atone to me before he could die. While catwaying to me, Alpha Kale also kept apologizing. Sarahina, I'm sorry to you and our two children, but I really didn't understand what was happening at the time. I didn't expect that Alara's child wasn't sick at all. At that time, I thought our daughter's surgery hadn't started yet, that she could still wait. I never thought she would just leave like that. When you were attacked by rogues, I was indeed with Alara. I thought just briefly reuniting with them wouldn't cause any problems. At that time, I also felt guilty toward them. I never imagined we would lose our second child like this. I know that in your eyes, I'm already a sinner. But I still have to apologize to you. Only after you left did I realize I had already fallen in love with you. I will follow your wishes and atone for my sins. But I hope you won't forget me. As he spoke, tears kept falling. Only now did Elder Genevieve realize what was happening. She angrily stepped forward, wanting to stop her son from doing such a thing, but was stopped by Alpha Kale's angry shout. What kind of poison did you feed my son? You shameless she-wolf. If it weren't for you, he would still be fine with Alara. It's all you. It's all you. All you who ruined the Black Moon Pact. Elder Genevieve cursed with foul language. Alpha Kale finally couldn't stand it anymore and angrily scolded, enough. Mother, as the only feeling I have left is mother. Do you know? If you had been a little nicer to Serafina, if you hadn't constantly spoken badly about Serafina in front of me, the Black Moon Pact wouldn't have fallen to this state. You love that child so much. But he's not even my biological son. Alara only came back because she saw the Black Moon Pact rising again. She's the real shameless she-wolf. Elder Genevieve was stunned by Alpha Kale's scolding. After learning that Alara's child wasn't his biological son, Alpha Kale had sent him back to Alara's family pack. But because he was afraid his mother would be heartbroken, he hadn't explained clearly to Elder Genevieve. Until this moment, Elder Genevieve had always thought the pup was her eldest grandson, who had just been staying at his maternal pack recently. After learning this news, Elder Genevieve looked at the scene before her, rolled her eyes, and fainted. Soon, Elder Genevieve was sent to the hospital. Elder Genevieve hadn't been involved in any of the Black Moon Pact's affairs. She also had some money of her own, so even if Alpha Kale went to prison, he didn't need to worry about his mother's livelihood. After watching his mother being taken away, Alpha Kale smiled bitterly and continued speaking. I know you hate me now, and I know you also hate Alara and want to get revenge on her, but I've already done this for you in advance. Alara was tortured to death. She suffered greatly before dying. I threw her body into a sewer. I knew you couldn't bring yourself to be so ruthless, and I didn't want her to dirty your hands. But if it weren't for Alara, our children wouldn't have died at all. When he spoke of Alara, his eyes were full of hatred. I hadn't expected Alpha Kale would go this far. The police beside me had already recorded everything Alpha Kale said. I thought I would feel satisfied. But now looking at Alpha Kale's pleasing expression, I didn't know what to say. Finally, I just asked one question. Years ago, did you save a kidnapped little girl? Alpha KLN looked confused. I asked again, are you related to the Silvermoon Pack? Alpha KLN thought for a moment and still answered, the Silvermoon Pack is a relative of my mother's. We had contact 10 years ago, but after they developed overseas, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Hearing this, my heart suddenly relaxed. Looking at Alpha KLN being taken away, still reluctantly looking back at me, that was the only feeling I had. I knew he wouldn't have a good time in prison either. So the little boy who saved me back then really was Alpha Darius. No wonder he started pursuing me after meeting me just once. So my beginning with Alpha KLN was wrong from the start. After paying such a heavy price, I finally understood this point. Fortunately, after all this time, I had only lived through my 20s. In the future, I still have much more scenery to see.
Dear, this story is over. If you enjoy this book and craving more, subscribe my YouTube and Patreon channel today to unlock our latest stories and become a foundational member of our growing community. We appreciate your support more than words can say.